Yes, Gloria, welcome to our I2E Knowledge series, Meet the Founder series. Thanks a lot for being here, and absolute pleasure to actually host you.
Hi, Jibin. Thanks again for getting me on this platform. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Sure. So maybe if you can give us a brief intro about yourself and Guardians before we start, that'd be great.
Okay, so my name is Gloria Belli. I run a non-profit organization called Guardians of Dreams. We work to improve the quality of care across shelter homes and orphanages, and I've been doing this for the last 13 years. And yeah, getting a little old now. But yeah, that's just a quick brief about what I do.
Sure. So maybe if we go back a little bit, right, and share a little bit about your starting journey. How did you start working on this particular space, or how did you actually decide to start your own? Maybe if you can walk us through a brief journey, that would be great.
Yeah. So one of the responses that I get a lot when I say that I'm working with underprivileged children or I'm working in the nonprofit space, there are two kinds of responses. One is people are like, "Oh wow, did you always know this is what you wanted to do?" And then there's a second response where they're like, why the heck are you in this space, and why would you want to waste your potential and waste your time, right? So I'll just go a little bit back to for the first bunch of people who generally ask, okay, did you know this from the start that this is what you're passionate about? The answer is no. Right, in a lot of ways I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, or a social entrepreneur rather. I come from a middle class Malayali family, right, in Cochin. Grew up, most of my teenage life was in Saudi Arabia, which meant that there was very little exposure. So when I came back to Cochin to do my higher education and college, one of the things that I realized was that I had very little exposure to social issues that a country like India faced. I grew up in a privileged bubble. I still do in a lot of ways, and I think the some of the early experiences when I was 19, 20, while we were in college, really stuck in the sense that there are certain things in life that seemed too unfair, and I kind of just wanted to take a stab at making it a slightly, um, I think, a slightly more level playing ground for children or people who may have not had, had the privilege that you and I have. So just to kind of go back, actually, my journey in the space started when I was in college, when a couple of my friends actually visited a shelter home, and they came back really excited about having spent some time with the children, and how children responded. And then when they told me about some of the stories, I was like, this is it. I definitely want to be a part of this, and let's make it bigger. And through conversations is when, and we kind of got together and we decided that, hey, let's set up something, because we have a lot of free hours in college on because we're all college students, and so we have a lot of free hours on weekends. Let's spend time with children in shelters and teach them English. And that seemed like a really fantastic way to give back. And that's how my first organization, which was Make a Difference, started. We started with just about 20 volunteers in Cochin. We had no clue what we were doing. We were just 19, 20, going around looking at shelters and getting them to give us a chance to teach children English, because we felt that English back then in 2006 was, we thought that was like what you needed to kind of open up doors and open up opportunities, and we started there. Um, Little did I know that I would continue being in the space 13 years later. Um, had my path charted out to, belling the cat, and doing my MBA, and taking up a job in some a fancy corporate, and then living life, right? And but then what the next decade had in store for me was, I think, was interesting, and I'm in a lot of ways glad. It gave me the opportunity to kind of really understand what was going on in shelter homes, and what was also going on in the lives of children who were not born into stable families. And then when I looked around, I realized that, larger society is blind to such children, because if I look around, even in my personal network, I don't have a single friend who's grown up in a shelter home, right? And so that's the privileged bubble I'm talking about. We don't see children who've grown outside of family care. We don't know of children who've become adults growing up in institutional care. And so the question was, where are they going, and why is it that they're not really interacting in similar circles, and why is it that why is it that they're not succeeding? And so those are the questions that were really plaguing us. As we started, operating in this space. And I think the key issue that we're trying to solve is that childcare institutions, that is orphanages and shelter homes, at the moment are operating at extremely subpar quality, primarily because the larger public, like you and I, have very little access to their issues, very little access to their challenges, and hence a very little resources getting to them. And it's important that there's somebody, that there are people who are actually like speaking on their behalf and bringing the issue to light. And that's the work that me and my team are doing. Right. So make a difference for me was, in a lot of ways, a 10-year immersion into the space. And the kind of success that we had in the beginning was insane. Like, we started in 2006 with just 20 volunteers in Cochin. By 2009, we were across 9 cities. In 2011, we were across 23 cities in the country. Had no clue that this is what we were building. But somewhere along, what happened was that college students across the country was waiting for an opportunity, and setting up chapters and spending time in shelter homes and giving back seemed to have clicked. So that's what I mean by accidental. So we seem to have found a gap without even intending to, and then we just kind of, I guess, in a lot of ways, rode the wave. Um, but now, after about, I think, about 11 years with Make a Difference, I moved out to start Guardians of Dreams, because the first phase of immersion was incredibly useful to really understand the sector. Uh, what is it that the shelter homes and childcare institutions, what were their challenges, and how best to start looking at systemic solutions.
Right.
So my current organization, Guardians of Dreams, is looking to work with shelter authorities, with people who are running the childcare institutions, and seeing how some of their issues and challenges can be solved, and ensure that the quality of care is deserving,
Right.
uh, not
So,
deserving, but
Gloria,
quality of care is what it
sorry.
deserves. Yeah.
So I would definitely want to revisit, more about Guardians of Dreams. So before we do that, you have briefly touched upon, your the stint with Google per se, right? You had
Yeah.
job at Google, and how has that that transmission from Google to working, starting up on your own, and but that too in a non-profit space, right? It's not super glamorous or anything, but it's working on the
Really.
non-profit space, right? How
Yeah.
has that? How was the transition, and what were some of the difficulties that you had to face? I don't want to use the word difficulty per se, but what was the challenges that you faced, with respect to your parents, right? Uh, I had a similar experience with me not taking up a job in a company and starting up on my own. But I want to hear from your perspective. How was that journey been, right? And some of the other key learnings that you had during that period as well.
No, thanks for asking that, because I tend to skip over that, but it is a crucial juncture in my journey, I think, because my first actual work, or my first job, was at Google. So I spent the first 5 years of my work life in possibly the most sought after company, right? And it was fantastic, right? But there came a point where there was, how, like, we we come across like different turning points in life. And it was important 5 years after I joined for me to take a decision on whether I wanted to continue staying on in the corporate world, or whether the social sector and growing and scaling my organization is what I wanted to do, right? So in my heart of hearts, I knew that what I wanted to do was to move into the social sector and work for children, because that's really brought a lot of meaning to my life. But for all practical reasons, it was a very tough decision. Um, for the longest time, my parents wouldn't understand why I did that, or why I would even consider. Um, uh, Actually, they for the longest time thought that it was a phase, that I would get over it. Right? It's only now that I've been in this space for 7 years, been full time in the space for 7 years or more, is finally settling down that, oh, she's here to stay. This is it, right? That was one. Yes, getting family and dear ones to support this decision was definitely not easy. Right, the first few years just kind of plowed through and kind of just anchored myself, saying, you know what, there's a reason why I did this. It'll take time for everyone to see it, but I'm just going to kind of plow through this. The second, for sure, is financial constraints, because in the social sector, I mean, we all know that, like in the social sector, there are limits to the amount of remuneration that you can take. Um, in the long term, in the long term, it is nothing like the for profit or the corporate space, right? So for me internally, I needed to kind of also understand that this move meant a lot more. Like, I would have to look at a change in lifestyle. Am I okay with what the social sector would bring into my life in terms of the financial constraints, etc.? I needed to kind of just talk. I mean, internally be okay with that, and then I mean, I was. So, but that was a stark difference that I saw while I was working in Google and then when I moved. So, when I was in Google, had the option to travel abroad, right? And I was at the airport and I was checking in, and the lady said, "Hey, listen, there's a business class seat that's empty. Why don't I just give you an upgrade?" I'm like, "Oh, cool, yeah. I mean, I'd love that." And I had this super comfortable journey. It was a breeze, right? Just 6 months later is when I was then working in the social sector, and then we had to make international travel to Malaysia for a very, very crucial organizational design, supremely impactful for the organization if that was successful. And we were at the check-in counter, in fact, in Cochin actually, and we just was talking to the guy who was checking us in, and then he asked us about, what do you do? We said we work with the nonprofit, and then he paused, and he's like, wait a minute, you know how many children you could feed with the ticket that you've just taken to go to Malaysia? How can you be okay with this? And I mean, so that's just the difference in the way the community generally sees the sector or work in the space. And even now, when I go into, let's say, gatherings with where people are curious about what I do, the question is usually, okay, what do you do? And I say I work in the nonprofit space, and then they're like, what do you do full time? And I was like, that's what I do full time. So how do you support yourself? So there are a lot of myths around working in the space, but that is still not broken. But the good thing is that the social sector in India is transforming. It is no longer, hey, you know what, I'm gonna, give up everything in life and just wear a kurta and a bag and just like walk out. It's no longer that. It is a space that is professionalizing itself, right, and making significant progress in the way that it's able to support and care for the people who are coming into the sector as well. Um, but, but yeah, that's probably, I guess,
Sure. Sure.
turning point.
Great. So if you can come back to the where where we actually discussing about Guardians of Dreams, your current organization. Uh, can you talk a little bit about Guardians of Dreams, and also what are the future? How does the future looks like? What are the plans that you have? And also, how are you operating right now? How many chapters do you have? Where are the shelter homes and everything?
Yeah. Okay, so Guardians of Dreams was is just 5 years old, and that is actually a very very young organization, given that we are operating on a much longer path, I'll say, because we work on the issue of childcare. It takes, in order to really see impact, it takes 18 years, right? A child has to grow up and then see how our inputs have actually impacted adult outcomes. So, I mean, everyone or my team in Guardians knows for a fact that we're in this in the long term. We're talking 30, 40 years to actually make a significant change. We're currently focused on improving the quality of care across orphanages and shelter homes. Just a quick question, Jibin. Have you been to a shelter home or an orphanage before? Have you
I
visited a
ha-
shelter before?
I would say no.
Right. So the thing is, the when you as soon as you walk into a shelter, right, the first, I mean, the usual sight that we see is that they're basically a bunch of kids that are crowded together, oversized clothes, they sleep on the floor, they barely have anyone to look after them, etc. So, and that has been the sight in India since the beginning, right? And no massive transformation has happened, and that's primarily because we're okay with that in a lot of ways. So that is a narrative that we want to change. We want to ensure that every single shelter home in India is run like, let's say, a Doon school or any other boarding school, right? We want to kind of, reimagine a really safe, aspirational space for our most vulnerable children, and they need it more than anybody else because, uh, you know, the only protection that they have is state protection, right? So that's the vision and that's the goal, and that's where we're headed towards. At the moment, we're working with about 200 plus, 200 odd shelter homes across Bangalore, Chennai, and Ernakulam. And we primarily intervene in the space by, one, we have an infrastructure program where we go in and renovate the space. This is crucial because in order to change anything in the way that the home operates, they need to have the facilities, right? So that is one. Second is we provide scholarships to children who are passing out of 10th and 12th as they transition into society. That's the second. And third is we have a small edtech program that we run for a couple of shelters in Bangalore. That's what we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
so great. One quick question: how can one support what the cause that you're doing? So traditionally, for an entrepreneurship, you can fundraise or you can get revenue for the service that you're building. How do one support what you're doing, and how do you manage to do that? And if I have to make a donation, how would I do that?
Yeah. So people can do two things. One is give your time, or second is make a donation. Right. So for those of you who have the time, the way that we uh, I mean, the way that we access that is we have volunteer chapters across the three cities that we operate in. And so a volunteer is recruited and they give about 2 hours a week towards our activities. So those of you interested can join one of our chapters. You just need to visit our website and sign up to volunteer, and we have regular recruitments and you'd be a part of a larger chapter. And the idea is that the reason why we do this is also that we can't do this alone, so it's really crucial to involve the community. And yeah, so our volunteers is the community. The second would be that, yep, you could make a contribution towards our work. Two ways, both via our website is possible. One is a one-time donation, and second is you could also sign up for a small amount monthly, and that's basically how anyone could plug into the work that we do.
Cool. Okay. So my next question is: at this point in time, looking at the future of Guardians of Dreams, are there any particular partnerships that you're looking at? Certain organizations that you want to partner with, or certain people that you want to get connected to. That think of it as that if the network may be able to help you. There's certain partnerships that you're looking at. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So we're in that stage where our organization is also going into like a 2.0 version, where we are, after having spent about 5 years in the space. Now we have like a lot of data and information about the real challenges on the ground, and we're redesigning a lot of our programs. And hence in this round, what we're really looking for are, let's say, folks who are interested in I guess supporting the design and the research work that we're looking to do. I wouldn't have names of institutions per se, but either individuals, philanthropists, anyone who's basically been interested in partnering with us in the long term, right, and actually willing to walk with us on this journey as we redesign and transform the organization to its 2.0 version. Um, there are no names of organizations that come to mind at the moment, but basically just in the network, if there are people who are interested to be a part of a social impact initiative, that
Sure.
would be.
So before we move on to the next segment, can you speak a little bit about the Scholastic program? Your Scholastic program that you're doing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe a quick brief about the program itself.
Right. So the Scholastic program is actually focused on 16 to 19-year-olds. So in shelter homes, what happens is that once you pass your 10th or 12th, often you are asked to leave the shelter because legally, around the time you turn 18, you no longer need state support, right? And what happens is that then you're extremely vulnerable again. You don't really have financial support to continue your education. So what we do is we step in and provide a 25,000 cash award for the meritorious students in each district. So top 50 meritorious students in Ernakulam, Chennai, and Bangalore receive this cash award, and career guidance and work readiness upskilling that we do on a one-on-one basis. Right. So this is the key aspects of the program.
Got it. So we'll be moving on to our next segment, which is the photo work segment. But before that, a couple of questions. Is there a company that you wish you co-founded? Other than Guardians of Dreams or Mad, one company that if you can name that you wish you co-founded.
Um, I admire another nonprofit and the way they go about things, which is the Nudge Foundation.
Okay.
Right, it's just really interesting the pace of execution and the way they have really grown over the last few years. So I guess, yeah,
Okay.
not
Uh,
necessarily wish to think about it, but yeah, I do
okay.
admire their work.
Which is your favorite book?
My favorite book actually is called The Second Sex.
Okay.
It's a gender. I mean, it's a really intense discussion and thought-provoking writing on gender
Yeah.
and the role that women play in different spaces. So yeah, that's, I guess, would
Okay.
be one of my
So
favorites.
on that note, we'll actually move on to our next segment, which is called the photo walk, where we go through a couple of photos from your journey, and maybe if you can give us a brief about what is the memory behind this, and also what is the significance as well. So this is our first picture, a picture of you with Mrs. Obama.
Yep. So this actually is symbolic of the kind of insane success that we had in my first organization. So this happened back in 2009 when the Obamas first visited India, and they picked one organization to come and spend some time with, and they picked us because obviously we were young and energetic, and we worked with children. It
Right.
was a fantastic
Right.
experience
Do
interacting
you
with.
do you remember
with
the song that you were singing?
so interesting. Can I just give you a couple of interesting points about this? So if you
Right.
notice in the photo, the rest of the girls are holding that drum.
Right.
So initially, we wanted to give her the drum as well to hold, but the security said that's not possible because that covers a certain section of, you can't. So yeah, I mean,
Right.
so the yeah. Anyway, so it was really interesting to see the security around and the logistics of how they planned it. There was no real song. It was just we were just like banging drums and
Okay.
all of that and making noise. Yeah.
And this is the second picture. Yeah.
This is actually the time that we first got registered and our first bank account for Guardians of Dreams.
Okay.
The two people that you see here are also my co-founders, Aditya and Sujit.
Okay.
It was in a lot of ways super crucial that we finally, like, we decided to do this again when
Right.
we were 30, right? And that was a huge milestone.
And this is the third picture.
Yeah, I mean, this whiteboard actually, in a lot of ways, you may not be able to make sense of it, but it really, we did a lot of brainstorming on where we wanted to really start and why we would start working on childcare institutions and not all the other parts of the system, right? And this was just our first round of brainstorm on deciding that this is what we want to do. We want to transform the quality of care across childcare institutions. So that board is clarity, right? Clarity of where we're headed. Yeah.
Awesome. This is our next picture.
Yeah, so this basically is our first volunteer meetup. So what this is in Cochin actually, and we had once we had clarity on what we wanted to do, we got our first bunch of supporters and volunteers together, and this was our first brainstorm on how we were going to recruit the next 40 people to join our clan. And yeah, that's our young, lovable, energetic bunch there.
Awesome. And the next picture.
This is the four of us, which is, I mean, these are that's Mekha, Aditya, Sujit. They're my co-founders, and this is taken in IIM Bangalore. We got selected into the IIM social, incubator, and yeah, we just looked pretty also, so that
Right.
was together. But yeah, it was a very few times that we really all together taking a picture. So yeah.
Sure. This is the next image.
This one actually, we do this exercise, which was the profiling of childcare institutions and basically building a database. This was essentially 6 to 8 hours of my volunteer team sitting together and trying to crack this in Chennai. And it was, in a lot of ways, I took this picture and it really meant a lot to me. The fact that so many of us were sitting together and trying to make sense of data that is so fragmented. And all of this just being done by college students and volunteers who have other things to do but would still spend hours on this on weekends. So yeah, this just very
Great.
meaningful picture.
And the seventh image.
This is, I think, a bit of best of both worlds. This is an image from our Scholastic Awards ceremony. Those are a lot of there are awardees, and this is probably the one place where they get recognized for scoring so well. They rarely get a graduation ceremony. Nobody even really comes in and it says that they've done a good job. This was just our first gathering of getting them together and making them feel like they're on top of the world.
Great. And the last picture.
The last picture was symbolic. I want to talk a little bit about it. This is basically our the shelter in Bangalore that we do our edtech teaching program, and for me this was aspirational. The child is trying to read the English letters, and it says Guardians of Dreams. And she has her teacher and mentor standing right next to her. This was, in a lot of ways, shows what we're trying to build is to kind of get folks like us start going into childcare institutions and shelter homes and orphanages and get our children to start aspiring and dreaming for the world. So that's what this photo is. Yeah.
Awesome. So with that, we come to the end of. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we come to the end of that segment, and our next segment is called rapid fire. And yes, Gloria, I have changed the questions.
Oh
So
no.
we
Okay.
dive. So let's start. So you'll have 10 seconds to answer this question. Okay.
Right.
So our first question is: describe your organization in 2 words.
Tough love.
If you could trade lives with one entrepreneur for a day, who would it be and why?
Oh. I mean, this might be a bit controversial, but Elon Musk, because it's either we take care of childcare and save the planet, or we exit it. So it's would Elon Musk.
We get a lot of
And why?
Teslas and Elon Musk. We get a lot of Teslas and Elon Musk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more the space shuttle. Yeah, eject. But yeah, we
Okay.
would love to do that.
Your best memory associated with your organization.
I think my best memory was basically standing at the back of a huge hall, um, seeing this. The hall's like filled with super high energetic our volunteers and them dancing like crazy with our awardees, and the room filled with hopes and dreams. I know it's a little cliched, but that's actually the best memory. I just stood back and I just said, you know what, if we can do this in one city and we can replicate this across the country, so that would be my best
Okay.
memory.
Great. If not an entrepreneur, then what?
Ugh, boring corporate job.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
Actually, interestingly, somebody who told me that when I was trying to make these tough choices and I would panic, right, because there aren't really answers and no one can really give you this. They said that, if I can paint my worst case scenario and if I think that that's bearable, then just don't think, just take the leap. So that's been the best piece of advice. And whenever I'm, really in a dilemma or near meltdown of a decision, I just paint myself the worst case scenario and I say, do I have the grit to get through this? If I do, then the answer is I'm going to take the leap and do it anyway. So that's
Which is
that's
your which is your favorite social media platform and why?
I hate all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I hate all of them.
Okay,
Suppose.
great. So, with that, we come to the end of that segment as well. Before we break, I have an ask for you. So, basically, if there is one founder that you'd like to see a chat like this, it can be anyone from your network or from the external network as well. But if you'd like to see a chat like this to know more about them and understand a little bit more about them, who can you recommend one person? On if you can give an intro, great. But yeah, if there is
Yeah.
one person that you can, yeah,
For sure, I would say again, I would recommend somebody from the nonprofit space
right,
because I think we need to hear them out also. And
sure,
I'd recommend Pooja of Angel Creations.
okay,
Right? It's do I talk about her or I
you
mean just a quick.
can, yeah, sure,
Yeah, so it's what I really admire about the way that she's gone about stuff is that she's an IIT techie, I mean engineer at least,
right,
right? And she's chosen to set up a nonprofit, and she's done some incredible work with building playgrounds for children.
awesome.
And yeah, I'd recommend her.
Awesome. So great. With that, we come to the end of our, session as well. Gloria, this has been amazing. Thanks a lot for coming to our I2 Knowledge series. It's been great hosting you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jibin. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Jibin. It was a pleasure.